a multi-stream business in that respect. But my subject today is really talking about cooperatives working with the retailers. And what's actually allowed us to do it, because Norco's history, you'd think a business that's been around as long as we have, we'd be much larger than we have. Historically, Norco was confined by the, this might sound odd for a chairman of a cooperative to actually say this, but historically Norco was bound by the regulation system. We operated in northern New South Wales and we had distinct boundaries that we could operate within. So when regulation was taken away in 2000, we'd already taken into a number of arrangements in joint ventures in fresh milk. And that was predominantly to actually undertake a program with the retailers. We needed to have an East Coast distribution channel. And when I say that, we needed to supply Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Cairns, and to some degree Adelaide. If you couldn't do that, you didn't get an option to tender for product. And that continued for around 15 years. So that program had a significant impact upon the retailers, and it was all driven about unit price. So when the opportunity came for us to actually talk to the major retailers and start to engage with them about our diversity of business and our real interest is our farmers. We operate a cooperative, and we're not ashamed to actually say, just like Murray Goulburn, our interest is making sure they get the best milk price we can possibly put in their pocket with a reasonable dividend. That's a complete different model to many other corporate organisations. Theirs is about shareholder returns, ours is about milk price, and we don't lose that thought. So from a retail perspective, we need to be able to convince retailers that we can manage all the issues. We're not actually an organisation that has poor corporate governance. We don't fight. There are no public brawls. There are no factions within our boards and with our memberships. We actually need to make sure that, from a governance perspective, that we're a stable organisation that are applying ourselves to best practice in governance. Then we also need to make sure that we invest in our capital. The retailer's major concern is cooperatives historically have been very, very poor at investing in capital. They put all the money into milk price and then actually forget about investing in facilities. And we've actually had a good history and a good track record which we could actually demonstrate. So ultimately our success in putting a deal, not only with Coles but any retailer, is about, in fact, actually making sure that we over-deliver on their expectation. It's nothing less than that. To give you a sense of what the opportunity for an organisation to fill their factories and how that can actually affect a profitability of an organisation. If you look at these charts, the one on your left is actually telling you about the opportunity. We'll move to 57% of our business in generic, and we've come from 41%. Now that actually basically fills our two factories, one based at Labrador and one based at Raleigh near Coffs Harbour. And now running those factories at a higher level with our own branded products still going through them allows us to share the increased incremental return that we actually receive on those products back with the farm sector. And that's exactly what the retail market's actually looking for, moving away from the current process of it's not just price, it's about making sure that they actually are seen to be looking after the farm sector. So what's different about Norco? It's about our milk price and our members. We're extremely commercial, and I know that may sound odd to sound, but there have been a lot of cooperatives in the past 100 years that have actually failed purely because they don't actually act in a commercial way. And I know my board sometimes will actually give me a hard time, and our shareholders give me a hard time sometimes because we do take a commercial line. It's finding that balance between commerciality and actually doing the right thing by your members. We operate across the whole supply chain, and one of the things that we've found really interesting is, and it's not, and I say this not only about domestic, but our export market, is being able to tell a consumer and being able to sit in a room and have a conversation about the supply of your ingredients through your rural retail network and into the farm sector and manufacturing the product and putting it into the retail channel is a significant proposition that not many people can actually follow on. And I just need to let you know that our rural retail business is only our farmers, dairy farmers are only 10% of that business. But the fact is, we can actually engage with the retail customers on a global scale about all the things we do along the chain. So internally, and second, and finally on this one is that it's really important that we have some internal programs to foster the relationships with our farmers. So whilst we're commercial, we have many things that are going on internally in our business that we're very, very proud of. And I won't go through them. But the real issue, one of the, and I even checked this word out, whether what's the real word, is it providence, is it provenance, how do you actually explain it? But there's this growing trend across Australia and across the globe about where your food comes from, how far it travels, what programs it's gone through, how the animals are being looked after. Can we trace the product back to the final farm if we need to? It's those things that not only Australian retailers are looking for, it's the things that actually the global retailers are actually looking for. And we have absolute confidence that we can actually do that. The systems that, and I say this about Australia, but I say this more about New South Wales and Queensland. Ironically, the system that New South Wales and Queensland put into place back in the, started in the late 80s and in the early 90s, about quality assurance, about trying to keep the milk from Victoria out of New South Wales. And I say that somewhat flippantly, but that was the reality. We put quality assurance programs in place that are second to none across the globe. And what we do is engage, and we are very, very pleased to actually take our retailers through it. And only recently I actually sat down with a major retailer and actually showed them how it works and how the internal audit process and how the external audit process is undertaken to make sure that our farmers are doing the right things so that we can actually stand behind what we actually say. And that's the number one piece as a smaller business. We need to find that proposition in the marketplace that people need to work for. We don't need to supply every customer what we need to, every customer across the globe. We need to pick the ones that we want to work with that actually respect us. So, and I think the piece that I find really interesting, because me and my wife have a little bit of a chuckle about this, and occasionally I do go shopping from time to time. But I think the thing that is really interesting is the retailers have got really sophisticated about how they track what we actually do as customers. And the fact that is the moment you hand over your card to actually pay for your goods and use your, whatever that card is my wife uses, which I refuse to have, tells them exactly my shopping habits for a history of time. And people just don't understand that you give that information away. It's a Flybuys card. It actually gives them information, but they are tracking it and they are using that information. And that information has clearly told them that what we're actually proposing is exactly what they're actually looking for. So to give you a couple of photos, I was very cautious about what I picked here. Oh, sorry, have I gone one too far? No, I haven't gone far enough, sorry. I haven't been watching the slide. So, sorry about that. So on the right here, on the left here, you have Curtis Stone. Curtis is with the farmers, and I expect at some point in time it'll be the Murray Goulburn or Norco. Someone is going to have a photo, and there'll be a real squabble, I'm sure, about who it's going to be. But it doesn't really matter. The end of the day is the consumers, and if you listen to those ads, and there's a whole range of them, there's even one with Curtis Stone actually leaning on a gate and talking about the farmers set in a shop, and it actually looks like they're on a farm. The interest from the retailers about how they can prove to the consumers that they actually have a direct relationship with the farmers has completely changed. In the 80s and the 90s and 2000, it was about price, price, price. Just tell us your best price, don't tell us about anything else, we just want the price. It has changed, and your shopping habits actually have changed that. On the right, we've got one of our farmers, and we've got a local, and I won't play it today, but we've got a local farmer called Ken's Wadsworth, who actually farms at Coorabell. I'd say it's one of the best places in Australia. Coorabell overlooks Byron Bay, and actually the lighthouse actually swings past his farm. Just an amazing piece. His farm is one of the original farms that started supplying Norco in 1895. So what's the benefit of actually supplying a major retailer? And there are really significant benefits in Australia. It's about access to channel to market. You can't ignore the three big, Aldi, Woolworths and Coles. You just can't ignore them. To do that, you're doing that at your peril. But what we do is that we've actually made the proposition that we're more than happy to actually share the margin and the benefits that we actually take and actually demonstrate that transparently back to the retailers. We've had conversations with the retailers about value adding. So when we've actually got surplus milk from time to time, we've actually gone back to them and said, look, we've actually got some opportunities. We actually are very keen to actually share them with you and then actually share those rewards with our members. And we've actually done that. And in fact, more recently, we actually released a price increase across our members for a 6-month period of 1 cent a litre due to that fact that the retailers had actually helped us do that. We don't have our own brands in our manufacture of products, so that actually helps us to some degree. It means that we don't necessarily have that, especially in the manufacture of ice creams and yogurts, we don't have that affiliation that we have to support our brands. We can actually do things that others want. And just to give you an example, the way it works in the ice cream business, we do the whole gamut of it. We have an R&D team, we have the manufacture, and we have the logistics. We basically, you come with a proposition, we'll actually make it for you, and we'll find it, and we'll actually test it in the market for you, which you need to pay for, but we can do that whole lot. And that's actually working really well for us. But one of the things I think is really important, and I say this about suppliers, and it's about our farmers, I could have actually said our farmers, but if our farmers need to be educated about what are the expectations of the retailers. And just on the reverse of that, the previous point, it's about we need to educate the retailers on us, the farmers, and what's actually occurring at farm. So there's a two-way street, and we found that to be incredibly rewarding. Sitting around a room and actually having that conversation is very interesting. But again, it's about the fact that we need to find those balances between milk price, reinvestment, and reward for your capital in the business. And ultimately, just as Murray Goulburn do, your profits that we create through manufacturing and distribution of product in Australia actually stay in Australia. And it's not to say, and I say that very cautiously because it's not to say that a foreign company that's invested in Australia it's wrong. It's not. It is. That's great. We actually need investment in Australia, but our proposition is we shouldn't be embarrassed. Our proposition is support us, please. Now, one of the things that I think I want to take a little bit of latitude with this is that one of the things I think about when I was given this topic on presentation was people actually just assume that we operate in the domestic market. And these next two slides, and I was very pleased to actually see that there was, and I can actually update my slides, is that the next two slides actually talk about what's going on the global scale. And this first one's about, as we saw this morning, about the income growth. And this is an older slide, but it's been repeated. This was created by Rabobank back in about 2004, 2005. And it just tells you that as income grows, so does the change in your food and what you're actually spending it on. Meat and dairy are the ones that are actually going to be the benefits from this perspective. But the next one's about, I find this really, really interesting. The next one's about, everyone talks about we've got all this huge global opportunity for dairy and agriculture. But unless we get productivity gains from the existing land, we're in real trouble, in my view. There is a real, just as we've seen the retailers change their buying habits, at some point in the near future, I would suggest there's going to be real changes in how we actually either get productivity gains or who's going to miss out. Because as the population grows, there's not enough food, and it's coming. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. And we might keep it off for a little while, but it's coming. And more importantly, I'm going to talk about this as we go. These next couple of slides are going to miss some, but I'm going to go down to the second last dot point. It's about volatility. Volatility in not only milk in your commodity prices, but volatility in how we actually manage droughts, floods, and things like that. And one of the reasons that we had a really good conversation with some retailers back in 2009 flood in Brisbane was, in that flood in January 2009, I think it was 2009, you could go to McDonald's, you could get a burger and you get a piece of meat. You couldn't get the tomato, you couldn't get the lettuce, and you couldn't get the sauce because of the way we've created a system. Now, that was the first time, to my knowledge, that McDonald's actually suffered that consequence. And it was a really interesting one. And all the retailers, everyone knew about it. But the fact was, for a short period of time, it wasn't very long, but you could not get what you were used to. And boy, does that create a problem. It's the same with milk. You couldn't actually get milk either at a point. So what we need to start talking about and what we need to start thinking about is how, as businesses, are we going to actually manage those critical periods of volatility? Because today we can actually see that things aren't too bad, but at a point in time there will be the volatility and we've got enough to actually manage, but how are we going to actually manage those issues of who gets the product and who does not get the product? And that gets me to the point about relationships. It's how you're actually honest about it. So one of the things that we've done across our not only our domestic business but our export businesses, we've actually built relationships not just with an individual but with organisations. It's really important for us to actually do that.